Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Inside Lowell Daily Pulse, the Tuesday, April 8th edition of the Daily Pulse. I'm your host, Teddy Panos, coming here from the WellPoint Studios here in beautiful, historic, albeit rainy, windy, and cold downtown Lowell on this April 8th. However, inside the studios, things are heating up because we got one of our regular guests here to the Daily Pulse from the Lowell Sun. What is your official title? Do you have the City of Lowell beat reporter?
Gadfly, I think. Does that work for you?
Official one. What does it say on the business card?
On the business card it says multimedia reporter.
Multimedia reporter.
But I just keep it straight and just say reporter.
Lowell Sun reporter.
Lowell Sun reporter.
Melanie
but you're right.
Gilbert.
Mostly the municipal beat.
You've got the City of Lowell.
Which is a pretty
beat.
big, it's Board of Health, it's Planning Board, it's City Council, School Committee, And
you're doing it by yourself, pretty much. They used to have multiple reporters, plus a whole team of editors and all that fun stuff.
It's kind of interesting. If you have a newsroom, you can sort of collaborate, so you can have people who have different beats, but they can be talking to somebody. Like, I like the overlap. I like it that I have my thumb in every pie, because I can see the connections, because a lot of these, particularly development, goes through a bunch of different boards, so it's going to go before the Conservation Commission, let's say. It's going to go before the Zoning Board, the Planning Board, maybe the Health Board, who knows? So it's, I kind of see the arc of all these things, which is fun.
All right. Well, you do, you got your finger on the pulse of Lowell, which is why we like
you
to
too, Teddy.
Here, and on the world around it. So we got a lot of it to talk about with Melanie.
But you know what? This is my third time here. And I want to know, do I get a card or something that I can have you punch?
You may get your own key to the bathroom. you want a frequent Flyers card?
So after 5 visits, I get a free coffee or something.
Coffee from the coffee. Oh, I like that.
Yeah, so I could get my card punched.
Sounds good. Maybe we'll get her dance card punched. I don't know about a discount, but Melanie Gilbert will get to our discussion in a quick second. Let's just quickly thank our Daily Pulse sponsors, Ray Booten, licensed realtor, Massachusetts and New Hampshire, certified appraiser in both of those states as well. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home, a business, or a commercial property, Ray Booten is your man. Find him online at realestaterayBooten.com. Thank you as well to our friends at WellPoint. WellPoint is the only health plan offering healthcare benefits exclusively to Massachusetts GIC members at WellPoint. Your whole health is their whole point. And just yesterday, I had the pleasure of catching David Morales and others from WellPoint, along with representatives at 98.5, the sports hub in Boston. We were all at the Stocklosa School in Lowell to surprise a couple of teachers for their outstanding dedication and going above and beyond for the students of Lowell. And they were rewarded, get this, along with their little goodie bag that they were given each a signed puck by the Boston Bruins' David Pastrnak. Pretty cool. Future Hall of Famer.
Does WellPoint do them as well? Are they connected?
Oh, yeah, WellPoint. If you look every now and then on the ice at the Fleet Center, you'll see that WellPoint logo projected. But they got an autograph puck and 2 tickets each to next Tuesday's Bruins game.
Wow.
I should have become a teacher. I should have
seriously
followed my mother.
Well, your mom was a teacher?
My mom was a teacher.
In Lowell?
Yeah. She taught Greek at the Hellenic.
Okay.
The Hellenic Academy. So that was the reason my parents made this journey to America from the villages of Greece, and I was fortunate to become a spoiled American kid instead of a Greek kid growing up in a village.
Yeah. So she was a teacher back in Greece?
She was a teacher in Greece, and then came over. They had a program, the Greek government and the Greek consulate. There were so many Greek immigrants in America, and the Hellenic was the only full-time day school in all of New England. So they wanted to keep the Greek language and culture alive for all the different immigrants. So she was transferred here to.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome!
Yeah, my father came kicking and screaming, and then he never went back. Ironically, till '86.
And then he opened the restaurant, right?
He opened the restaurant with his brothers.
That's a great story.
The rest, as they say, is history. The typical immigrant story, which a lot of in the news. We got a lot to talk about. I want to start by recapping the Sunday column.
What do you think, Teddy?
Your pièce de résistance. We're doing a lot more local now.
Yeah. I'm staying on message.
I'm liking it. I like the drone footage of the encampments, because I'd seen some ground level videos that were being shared on a couple of social media pages, but to kind of see the above, the bird's eye view of it.
I know that drone is kind of scary, right? Like it's kind of, there's nowhere to hide. Right. And right now, particularly with all the leaves off, it's pretty visible. I think why I ran that too is because I had no idea about that camp at by Industrial Avenue. So that was pretty impressive. That's the most impressive camp I've seen with 3 trailers, a boat. Like, what the heck, a shack made out of pallets. Like, it's impressive what they put together there.
For a lot of folks, it is, I don't want to call it a lifestyle, but they've learned how to do kind of that outdoorsy thing, and they don't necessarily want to go back to other things. It's a different problem from the kind of, I think, the mental illness component and whatnot. But if you're able to kind of have a camper, have a boat, you're kind of leading that outdoor life.
This is where I'm ambivalent, Teddy. Like, I feel like, okay, these folks can plan, organize, and execute. They've put themselves apart. Now, others would argue they put themselves apart because they're dealing drugs or human trafficking or whatever. I don't know. And that might be true too. But I feel like there's a piece there that we could utilize, that there's a model for settlement, as John McDonough calls it, a settlement living or refugee camp style living. And I don't know. I just wish we could look at other cities.
Giant tent cities?
Something, I don't know, because having it on conservation land is obviously not.
Correct.
It's not going to work. And I like the fact that they had a town dump for their little area that was away. Their settlement was clean. All the trash was by the water, about 100 feet away. So that was kind of interesting, because some of the other camps I've been in, the trash is everywhere. Like, it's just strewn everywhere. And this camp was probably the most orderly one I've seen outside of the dog park camp back in the day. But yeah, I don't know. I would love to. I'm not involved in any of those conversations. And, certainly the Hunger and Homeless Commission doesn't talk about any of this strategizing. It's like a coffee clutch, honestly. And that's no shade at Dan O'Connor, who runs the meetings, or any of the people who serve on the board. But it's not like a city council. It's not doing policy. But I do wish we could drill down into best practices. Who's doing it? Who's bringing it? And how are they doing that?
If there's an example out there, I'd love to see it.
I would too.
It just seems like every community is struggling, from Boston to Lowell. And I
do think cleaning out the camps without some sort of plan was dumb, because I think it pushed it all to South Common. And I think Boston was the bellwether on that. Clean out Mass and Cass, which I drove down. It was a disaster. But it pushed it all out into the neighborhoods. And I have friends who live in the South End and South Boston, and it's all over in their neighborhoods now, in the little parks and stuff. So maybe that wasn't the best plan. It was an idea, but maybe not the best idea.
And now it appears that the overnight camping ban has cleared out South Common. But as you pointed out in the next item in the column, we're now getting out of the winter protocol.
Don't you like that segue? Did you like that?
Yes,
Thank you.
You did. You did a nice job connecting it.
Knitting it all together.
But it will be interesting to see. So everyone said, that camping ban was effective. Look, they were gone. But the timing of it also happened to be with winter. I am curious to see now, will people start to trickle back to South Common and the other more public areas? Will the police be as vigilant as they were originally in kind of making sure that the South Common area was cleaned up? And then how many resources does that effort take? Every spring we enter a new phase of the battle, right?
Now, I think it's on the city council agenda for tonight that they released the ESG and CDBG grants, and so they still have money apparently for this year. And I think Alternative House got, like, I'm spitballing, $45,000. It seems to me Elliott got around the same amount, but don't hold me to it. But so there is still money flowing, which was a big concern for a lot of the nonprofits, is what's that going to look like? So they're only funded through June 30th. And what happens after that? And then they were only funded through March 30th for the extra beds. So I drove past South Common the other day, and there were, the lawn chairs set up and the blankets and stuff, which isn't technically illegal.
In the day, right?
During the day.
You're just enjoying the park.
Right. As long as you're not drinking, whiskey or anything else, then you're in the clear. But they have not, as you probably read the op-ed from the city manager and the superintendent, they're not enforcing the city ordinance yet. They're only doing the state law against trespassing. All those arrests that they did, predominantly at Lowell Housing Authority, were through an existing trespassing law. So, which kind of begs the question, why do the ordinance? Is that performative? You already had a law to get people off of the private property. But I guess this is going to be...
the LHA is technically private.
Quasi-state government, right.
But it's not city property.
And the city police force isn't, it's private security either. So that raises a bunch of questions. Of course, the city works very collaboratively with Lowell Housing Authority. So you don't want to see that go south, obviously. So you're going to commit resources, but is that sustainable? How long can that continue? So the question of the ordinance will be, are they going to roll it out now that winter protocol has ended and South Common becomes perhaps repopulated? What's that going to look like? Because it's really a public ordinance, not a private ordinance, for private property like LHA.
So that was interesting. That's something I wasn't aware of, that even though there was a police presence there, they weren't using the camping ban to kind of disperse everybody.
No, they were using an existing state law, and I can't remember, 258 SCWYZ.
Yeah, you remember that trouble.
And so they have signs all over LHA that say no trespassing. So if you're on that property and you're not an LHA resident or visitor, authorized visitor, you're trespassing and you can be made to leave. But who's going to make you leave? LHA doesn't have a security guard. And even if they did have a security guard, they don't have arrest powers. So they call the neighborhood response unit to do that. And the neighborhood response unit has done a great job. I mean, but it's a 10-person force, and I mean, they've been bringing it, but how long can they bring it? Especially the winter cleared off South Common. They all moved into the basement of LHA.
Right, right.
And the hallways and stairwells. But once winter's over and they don't need the basement and hallways, where are they going to go? So now they can use the city public trespassing ordinance to enforce that sort of trespassing.
And we'll see
what happens.
Where will they be dispersed from South Common if that's where they choose to congregate again, and then where will they go?
Jays, I have one word for you.
So the hope is that they take some of the services available, whatever is available. I think we both know that there's just some people who are not going to do that, not capable of making those types of decisions, or not willing to abide by the certain.
There's some advantage to being outside.
Yeah.
And what's that advantage, and is it legal?
That's so. Is the hope that there are some people who think that if you do it enough, if you nudge them away from South Common, and then nudge them away from Jays, and then nudge them away from the river and other encampments, that they will eventually realize, okay, well, Lowell is not friendly anymore.
Or are they going to go drink
and move on somewhere else? So chances are they'll probably go to gateway cities that have the type of services that they then use in their day-to-day travels as well. Do they go to Lawrence? Do they go to Haverhill? Do they try to go back to Boston? Because I think there is enough evidence to show that a lot of the folks dispersed from Mass and Cass, as you said, found their way to Lowell as well as other places.
I can't confirm, but word on the street is they got bus tickets to Lowell. So, when Mass and Cass got cleaned out, and the ones who didn't leave ended up in South End and Southie. But, Eric 𝐿HE said something a long time ago, and at the time I thought it was sort of, because he spouts off all sorts of stuff, and half of it is actionable and the other half is performative. And this one I thought was performative, but the more I think about it, the more I think it has some merit. He said, do a gang type unit for the homeless, where you drill down, because it's usually, you could have 100 problems, but it's 5 people. Find those 5 people. Get them off the street. If we only, and I'm not meaning to minimize this, and I'm not a policymaker. It's easy to throw,
But you play one in the newspaper and on Daily Pulse.
But you give me that story, exactly. I'm the gadfly everywhere else, and it's so cheap. All you have to do is give me a card that I can punch with 5 visits. I get a free coffee. But I would love, the more I thought about it, I thought, he's got an idea. You're not going to go undercover homeless, but you just get a team together, and I think they do this somewhat. And who are your top 10 problem people, and how can we legally, compassionately, socially, whatever, address those 10 people? Because they might be the influence, they're influencers in the homeless community. Sure. Who are the influencers? And what do we do about that? And sort of try to drill down on the metrics of it. Maybe that's not possible. I don't know, because I don't know what best practices are in the homeless encampment community.
I'm up for any new ideas, creative ideas. It's clear that what we've been doing over the last several decades, I'll take you back to the war on poverty under LBJ. It's clear it's not working. Any creative ideas, any new ideas, I'm willing to at least listen to. And that,
And it's not like I'm going to the dark side here. I mean, I do.
Not yet.
Not yet.
I'm working on you, though.
I'm on the line.
I'm working on you.
But it's like we had 280 homeless or 300 homeless, and now we're down to 250. But was that offset by CTI opening a 20-bed transitional? They don't call it a shelter. They call it transitional housing, which is the new buzzword, rapid rehousing. Is it also offset by winter protocol? Was it all, I still haven't drilled down as whether the 20, 30 people in Chelmsford were counted. Are they Lowell or are they Chelmsford? That's a basic question. I have to call Dan O'Connor on that. So that would add up to the 50, right? So what does that mean? So I know that nobody has spoken to this. This is me talking, that the more services you offer, the more people will come. But I don't know. Is that true? But so
it makes sense.
It makes sense, but
if you just look at it, the evidence is yes, but
hounding them hasn't worked either. Like our numbers grew in September 2023, I think, by like 27%, and I think that was after the mass cast. But I would just love to get, into the meat of it. Like, ask the question. Have you ever seen that show where Jodie, what's her name? Jodie Foster. She plays a cop. Ask the question. And I'm like sitting there, ask the question. And the question I would have is, what are the metrics? What do we know about this population?
Right.
Who needs to be helped? How? And I do have concerns about the shelter, since we're on this topic. I saw that SMOC has an office on the 3rd floor who owns, I think it stands for South Middlesex Opportunity Council or something like that. They own LTLC. They own the building and they manage it. A lot of vacancies on their website for that property. So it's going to be hard to offer services when you don't have the staff, like across the board, like 20 vacancies. I'll have to double check on the most recent one, but that place is, they won't give me a tour. That sort of tells you. I might go in my Tyvek suit, but I'd like a tour.
Go undercover.
Yeah.
We'll get you some ratty clothes.
Yeah. They own that building, come to find out, has SRO, single...
Yeah, right. There
single
are
room occupancy.
They
pay rent.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Like almost $400 a month or whatever. I think the cap is $400.
I know a couple of folks who live.
Right. So I could just go visit them. Right. They have jobs and they, but so it's sort of semi-permanent. So they have income coming to that. I guess, I'm not out to get SMOC, and I'm glad they have a presence in helping people, but I'm a big, what's the accountability factor? Like how I know one person who's been living there 10 years almost.
Right.
So that's not working.
The idea is to help people eventually move on and get independent. The other unknown here, and you've reported on this, I think, since the last time you were here, was the dwindling population occupancy at the ICC, the former UMass Lowell and Conference Center.
It's about half.
You've gone from what?
700, almost 700.
To 400 something.
Right.
And the rest will be gone by the end of the summer. Where do they
Although they have
go?
the lease through the end of December.
Correct. It's going to take a little while.
I'm trying to add up that math,
It's going to take a little while to clean that up. But
I saw the inside. It wasn't... I didn't see the rooms. They wouldn't let me go into the rooms. But I saw the cafeteria and all the common rooms on the first floor, and it looked really... It looked good. That was less than a year ago.
Where are these people going to go? Where have the 300 or so who've already left gone? I have information. There are programs that are getting them housing.
Right.
Home Base and others are giving them a couple of years worth of rent. I think I've heard that.
Well, I don't know how that's going to work out if they don't have a green card, because their TPS is going to be... Why are you going to get them a rental?
Correct. Which lends another issue. But either way, if they're staying in the area or in Massachusetts in general, they're occupying more of the existing housing as they head out of the ICC and the other emergency shelters that are now slowly being the whole system's supposed to be empty by the end of 2025, right? So where are they going, and what effect does that have on the folks who have currently been looking for or been living in some of these low-income places? There's going to be a level of displacement there, and you may see the numbers start to surge again.
There are a lot of pressure points, right? And I would love to game out those pressure points. I might have to ask ChatGPT what's going on here. But yeah, I think the thing about the shelter, the migrant shelter, it proved you can do it. But it comes at a huge billion-dollar cost. So if we were to even take half that number, which is our 300-person population for homeless people, so we're looking at what, $500,000 a year at the state level, and who knows, it's not just the state that was throwing in money, it was everybody else too. So
the thing that bothers me is, you said it can be done. Where there's a will, there's a way. It's expensive, but why wasn't it done for all these years? And yet you allow all these migrants to come in.
Right.
And let's be honest, they weren't crossing the river. They weren't crossing
Not
the
all
Rio
the time.
Grande and coming
Some of
up
them
through
were
Texas.
already here. And
They were being flown into Logan Airport. They were part of an intentional government
That's why they
program.
were in the hallways.
That's why they were sleeping in the hallways of Logan. They didn't cross the Rio Grande to go sleep in the hallway.
No, and interestingly
at Logan.
enough, shame on all of us, because those reporters didn't say they came off the plane and set up shop in the hallway.
Well,
because you'd have to explain the plane part.
If you followed Twitter and X, you were aware of what was going on, but it was done. But that's inhumane negligence, because you already have a housing crisis, and you're telling these people now. I can't necessarily blame it. If you're in Haiti, your life can't be all that great. They're promising you opportunity. Yeah, just get on a plane, do this on your phone app, and we'll get you into the country, and we'll get so. Why not take it?
It buys you time.
Did you think you were coming to sleep in an airport while they then put you up in a hotel room if you were lucky, only to kick you out 16 months later? I mean, that type of leadership is cruel. It's inhumane, and I shudder to say it's not negligence. Nobody can be that negligent and reach these decision-making positions in our government.
It's very ad hoc.
It's intentional.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
It was done intentionally for a reason.
I feel like you give the government way too much credit. I think they stumble in the dark, honestly, and they just let it play out. And then they're like, oh, lesson learned. Yes, but at catastrophic cost.
What was the point? What was the point of creating this system where you hop on a cell phone and then you can get on a government paid for flight and be flown into an airport in Logan, LaGuardia, Kennedy?
Do you know if other, I don't remember reading in the Detroit papers that Detroit Metro had them sleeping in the hallways. I don't know that they were equally dispersed throughout the country. When I talk to my family in Michigan, they talk about Boston's migrant problem, so it's confusing. I don't know how it wasn't, in other words, you can't really find the metrics. Oh, so many went here. It wasn't like the Cambodians where you knew where they were going and there was a certain amount here and a certain amount here on purpose, not to overload the system. I remember reading that in the UMass Lowell history, is that 30,000 went to Long Beach, 30,000 went to Minnesota or some, god awful place if you're from Cambodia, or Michigan or whatever, and then 30,000, and then they migrated here after, but they weren't dropped here in mass, like the migrant situation. So I don't know. I don't know what happened.
Again, makes you wonder, like, this was intentional. And I think
to what end?
I think my theory is
that's why I'm here, Teddy.
My theory
What's your
is
theory?
You're bleeding population. It's all about apportionment. You're bleeding population in Massachusetts. What happens, and other, other, dare I say, blue states, New York, Massachusetts, Illinois. You're losing your population to Texas, Florida, whatever.
Where was the dogs? They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. Where was it? Ohio?
Springfield, Ohio, I believe. But you've now got, when you lose population in the census, what happens? You lose representation.
From 2020.
Massachusetts has gone from 13 congressional representatives to 11 when I started working in media, down to 9. Florida and Texas and other more red states are picking up
two of my 5 siblings.
Representation, which also equates to electoral votes.
2 of my 5 siblings moved south. So that's interesting from a blue state.
There are estimates that 9 to 11 in the next census, 9 to 11 seats will change in Congress, aka electoral votes. That's the equivalent of
But
one mid-sized state on election night.
But how does it help? The election was in 2020, and they didn't come until 2022, right? Or late 2021?
Except what happened in 2020?
The census.
The census didn't actually happen until 2021 when somebody else was sworn into office.
Oh, okay.
It was delayed because of COVID. And then,
But were the migrants already arriving here en masse?
They started coming after.
Okay.
Well, they were coming to some degree, but they started coming en masse shortly after the administration changed.
So, I mean, that's an interesting, I'm a big number believer, and I feel like we should just know the numbers. Is it true that if you offer services, more people are going to beat a path through your door?
Of course they do.
Is it true that if you crack down on them, they'll beat a path out of your door?
Eventually.
I don't know, because we only do the point in time once a year.
Well, that's where it would be good to get some information about those who left the ICC. Did any self-deport? And just say, you know what, I'm not dealing with this. I'm not going to get picked up in the middle of the day when I go grocery shopping.
I think they went to Canada. I'm pretty sure.
I'm going to go somewhere else.
Right. Or are they still illegal? Under the, not illegal. They will be illegal. They will eventually be illegal because their TPS expires. So they'll be in the country unlawfully, which subjects them to forced deportation. So they can self-deport, which I don't think anybody's going to do because you don't know what what does that process look like? You just get on a plane and go back to Haiti?
Go across Haiti becomes more complicated.
Or let's say.
Or you go Canada or Mexico.
Right.
And try to get
I don't know. I can't talk to any of those people. It's really hard.
But it would be nice if you got some information from the state, right, on what happened at the ICC. Where did these three? I'm sure you asked, right? And I'm sure you were met with crickets.
Well, it's like a HIPAA. We can't possibly disclose those numbers.
Well, they can tell you how many of them got jobs. Don't they tell you, 79 of the people got jobs, so found employment. 56 are going to school. They can tell you that. Why can't they tell you, 200 found
are in state housing.
In housing.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting.
Tell you what they want to tell you.
Yeah, so I think, the sooner that LHA can build their project up on Merrimack Street, the better. I mean, I think we do need more housing. I don't think the tariffs are going to help that. I don't think the tariffs are going to help that process. I think it's going to put a freeze on development.
All right. A nice little segue.
Thank you.
We've got Melanie Gilbert from the Lowell Sun joining us. Let me just quickly thank our Daily Pulse sponsors. I'll give Mel a chance to take a sip of that Coffee Mill coffee. Thank you to Ray Booten, licensed realtor, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, certified appraiser in both states as well. Find him online, realestaterayBooten.com. Thanks as well to our friends at WellPoint. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. And a reminder that the open enrollment period for people insured under the Massachusetts GIC, the Group Insurance Commission, kicked off April 2nd. It runs through the end of May. So if you're unhappy with your plan, take a look at what WellPoint has to offer. If you're already in one of the WellPoint plans, there might be one that might be better for your circumstances. If you're either about to start a family, if you've already started a family, or if you're downsizing your family and the kids are all grown up, you might want to find a different plan as well. But make sure before you make any decisions, you check out our friends at WellPoint. Thank you as well to Washington Savings Bank, banking that goes the extra mile. Make the switch now to Washington Savings Bank. TMI Properties, quality and value at every price point. Find your perfect space with TMI. Mahoney Oil, providing warmth and protection at Greater Lowell in southern New Hampshire since 1925. The Greater Lowell Community Foundation, improving the quality of life in Greater Lowell through strategic, impactful philanthropy. They just had another grant cycle open, by the way. Get more information on their Facebook page, on our Facebook page as well at Inside Lowell. Thank you as well to Francis E. Preventure Insurance, the agency Greater Lowell has counted on to insure its most valuable assets since 1982. And by the Massachusetts Pirates, bringing all the hard-hitting action and excitement of arena football to the Mill City Pirates. Back at home this Saturday night, April 12th, chasing win number 1 against some expansion team called the Something Freight. They're not even named after a city. It's a weird thing, but either way, get there. They're also doing a special breast cancer awareness night as well. So help support the fight against cancer and help support your Massachusetts Pirates. Root them on to their first victory of the year.
That was a very good chasing win number 1.
Chasing
I like
win
that.
number
it's both
1.
Positive and
Well, they brought in a new quarterback. I'll be curious
Yep.
to see if he's playing. We're actually going to talk to their coach later on today in our Inside the Pirates podcast. So we're going to root them on.
All right. Well, absolutely. Absolutely. It was just a nice turn of the phrase.
Of course. All right. You mentioned the T word, tariffs.
Yes.
How's
How's your 401k there?
My 40, I made the mistake of looking yesterday, and it was
You look a little pale.
a good hit. Well, at 59, I've been in the 401k and
Racket for a while.
I've been in the mutual fund thing long enough to know that don't look
Right.
until the end of the year. And there have been some years where I've been disappointed when I looked on December 31st. But if you stay in it long enough,
Right.
like I have 35 some odd years now, you're going to be okay.
Well, and that's the thing. Don't look and don't touch. And I think that's the thing they have to distinguish between people who buy on spec, that you're just going to do speculative buying on Amazon is going to tank or Tesla's going to tank or whatever, and mutual funds are completely different animals. So aggregately, sure, if you have what do they call it? The Magnificent Seven, Apple, Google, Microsoft, whatever, in one portfolio, you're going to be hammered. But most mutual funds don't. They're hundreds and hundreds. So it would take a lot for those to tank.
And I feel bad for anybody who is literally at the point of retirement
Yeah.
and in the next week or two was looking to cash in. One good bit of news, though, however, I checked before we hit the record button, and the market was up 1,000 points for the day. So hopefully we've reversed the slide. And
Well, people are
and can
buying
climb
the lows, right?
back.
Is that how? Listen to me,
smart.
like I'm some sort of stockbroker.
It's a game. It's paper
I
money.
just hand my money over to people and say, please do right by.
Well, that's why I was so, it bothered me to watch people suddenly, like bemoaning the crash of the stock market.
Because it's mental. Yeah.
And I get it.
Yeah.
I mean, it does affect real people. People's retirement funds are in there, but the people who took the biggest hit are the people you're supposed to not like, the top 1%ers, the hedge fund players,
Right.
and the venture capitalists and whatnot. They supposedly took their hit, but it also like nobody was upset when they intentionally shut down the economy. Now people are saying Trump is intentionally doing this,
Right.
which he did, but still the last few days did not match what happened to the economy in 2020 when they intentionally shut down the economy, which, by the way, we have still not recovered from as a society with all the other issues. And yet nobody was upset about the stock market then. Nobody said, you got to stop this. You got to stop. You got to reopen the government. You got to reopen society. Like, we were okay with freezing it then. So why so much outrage now?
Well, here's my question too, and this is what I want to do a parallel construct with you on that, is that they shut down the economy. So was that planned or was that ad hoc? So, you have like a handful of people, even in the city. You don't have 1,000 people running the city. You have a handful of people who are making these policy decisions, and you hope they go the right way versus the wrong way. But what if they don't? And what if they're guests, like, what did they call that? The planning when they tore down the acre and they tore down Greek town and they tore down when they were doing redevelopment, had that big plan. What was it called, Teddy?
I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
I can't grab and it was a disaster, right? And it's taken us 40 years to recover from that. So do these things really work? Are they really thought out? And I know COVID was unprecedented and there's no modern day equivalent to do sort of a war game it out. But yeah, and so when you already have that major hit, any other tiny hits, like the keep up on Gorham Street, he recovers from COVID, which leveled him. But then he can't recover from the crime. He can't recover from development that cuts his parking in half. He can't recover from gunshots on Thanksgiving weekend a block away. It's one little death by 1,000 cuts. So I think these big shifts are bad if they're not well thought out, like in homelessness. What are we doing here? But then also a lot of little things you can't game out. And those are the things I worry about. So when you get with tariffs, what impact is that going to have on development in the city of Lowell? For instance, Link, they just held a big conference this morning at 9 o'clock to
meet the Draper folks.
Meet the Draper folks. So when are they going to break ground, man? I mean, they said they were going to do it in early 2025. Where is it? I keep looking at the planning and zoning board. I don't see anything.
Yeah, my last conversation with UMass President Marty Meehan, and be it months ago, he talked about the interest rates were the biggest impediment at the time. I don't know what the tariff situation might be now.
Right.
But,
how's that going to look, though, for development?
So that's a good question. That's one of the great unknowns. I'd love to see some actual discussion and debate on it, because there's a lot of talk about tariffs, but I feel like a lot of it is either fear mongering or cheerleading or whatnot. I know that a couple of major unions are now saying, you know what, it might be worth a shot. The United Auto Workers.
Right.
Are okay with it. The Teamsters seem to be okay with it. If the people who support American labor are saying this will help American labor, isn't that what we want? Why are we concerned about Chinese goods or Mexican goods, not to pick on them, but any other country's goods, where people have taken American jobs, American manufacturing, brought it offshore to benefit from the tax laws, benefit from cheap labor, maybe slave labor, no health benefits, no 401k plans, and then come back and sell their products into America more cheaply, undercutting our own industry here. Don't we want to take the side of the workers? I always thought the Democratic Party stood for the American worker.
Well,
and unions.
We're not building.
Happened? What did I miss?
Yeah, we're not building cars in America. You know, I mean,
we are.
But that hasn't affected the price. I mean, I think cars are more expensive than ever. I mean, it's kind of crazy. I bought my daughter a used car with, good Lord, I think that car had 120,000 miles on it, $3,000. What? I bought my first car. It was like an Escort. I think there was a hole in the floorboard, for like $600 or $700.
Yeah, those days are gone.
Yeah, you can't get any good used cars.
Well, there was the COVID. Speaking of COVID, there was the COVID-induced shortage.
Oh,
of car
that could still be the.
I don't know. I've been told that has gone away. But
But cars aren't cheaper, even though we've offshored them.
The technology is now with the computers. That's why
I don't get it.
Your insurance, remember your insurance used to go down every year because the value of your car dropped. Now it doesn't. You're told because it's more expensive to repair.
Right.
Because they're so sophisticated now, and all these computer parts, and the parts are more difficult to find, and so on and so forth. But ultimately, if we help the American worker and the American economy, isn't that what we want?
Well, we did help the American worker, and people balked at the price because the American worker in those unions, this is not a judgment, it's just laying out the facts. We're making $30 an hour. They could start when they were 20, retire when they're 50, collect 80% of their pension, have health care for life at a subsidized cost. That's not sustainable either. I mean, maybe that model isn't working. Maybe we should have taken all that and gone toward mass transit, let's say. There are a lot of push me, pull me things here. I'm not saying people don't deserve $30 an hour. They're getting it at Costco, for crying out loud. So, or good health care and all that, or retire after 30 years of service at age 50. But cars weren't affordable. And so people started buying. I come from Motown, where we were hammered in the 80s. It was a ghost town. We started buying. I bought a Nissan. I couldn't afford a Ford. Are you kidding me?
But you got hammered because America was purchasing foreign-made vehicles without any tariffs on
back
them,
in the day.
While the American cars were whatever the cost was to produce here. Conversely, we couldn't sell American cars in other countries because there were barriers to tariffs there.
Have you been? Okay, but that's just one part of the problem.
It doesn't sound like free trade. Free trade is you don't charge anything, I don't charge anything. May the best car win.
Okay, in Europe, have you seen their roads except for the Autobahn? Our American cars don't fit. I saw a Cadillac.
Giant SUV.
Oh my gosh, no. I saw a Cadillac SUV come down like a German country road. It was like this, it looked like a tank. I mean, and it took up the entire road. They don't drive like that. They don't live like that. They have a ton of mass transit, as you know, the London Tube, all of that. It's just, there's a lot to tease out, right? I specifically to development, because there's a lot going on in Lowell. And I think because this ties to housing, ties to homelessness, which ties to, getting people off the street and getting our quality of life back. Are we going to be able to build our way out of this? I don't know. I don't know. Specifically to the homeless and housing connection.
So that is the unknown, and it is, right. And I will say, I leave open the possibility that this goes horribly
sideways,
bad, right? That the rest of the world says, screw you.
I know
We're not dealing
development
with
was
you and
already
whatnot.
hampered because of high interest rates. I get that. But they're still high. And now we have
Coming
tariffs.
down a little, slowly.
A little bit.
Inflation
yeah.
coming down slowly, albeit slowly.
Yeah. We'll
So-
see if that spurs enough. It's a high risk game to build stuff. So I don't know. What's next on your list?
Next on the list, we'll bring it back to Lowell City Hall. We're getting closer and closer. It's April now. In 2 months, candidates will be able to go get their papers to go get their nomination
that's when the
papers
fun begins,
to go
yeah.
get their signatures.
Right, the
And
signatures.
we've got we have. It's funny. All the challengers, all the candidates seem to be concentrating on one or two specific races. The
At-large.
Belvedere district. There's one at-large challenger on the council. There's one challenger in the Highlands. Right, the two most populous or the two highest turnout districts, District 8, Upper Highlands,
Yeah.
District 3, Belvedere, they've got competitive races.
Right.
You got one at-large challenger. School committee side, you have no district challengers who have made their voices heard yet. You have potentially a preliminary, though. You have 4, maybe 5 people who will get into that school committee at-large race. So it's a weird, you may have to have a citywide election for 3 races.
Over 3, yeah.
When you think about it,
If they
right?
pull all their signatures.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
So it's a really weird political
I know.
season right now.
You see all these protests going on, hands off, and then there's no local bump in terms of running for office. And school committee, city council is a good place to start, or the boards or whatever. Those boards have a ton of influence. So you don't have to go big or go home. You can start small and get in the mix, and I would love to know. I need to do some field work and find out why people aren't running for office. It doesn't make any sense to me.
The risk reward isn't all that great.
It's a huge time commitment. I do think it should be full time, honestly. I think they should be hired.
If you want to give them raises,
Well, yeah, the budget really isn't there for that, but I do wonder if it would run more efficiently.
it was interesting over the weekend. Turnout. You had 2 elections over the weekend that you folks reported on.
Yeah, Tewksbury and
Tewksbury saw only 8% turnout.
Yeah.
But Billerica got to about 16%.
yeah, they're high performing.
And I've as much as people dump on Lowell and their turnout and how it was pretty bad in 2023, but it was it was like 7,500 or so out of 67,000. So you had about 12%. We're generally in the 15 to 20%
Right.
range in Lowell, so we're usually on the higher end than some of these surrounding towns.
Right.
Which blew
We have
away
no
one of my
excuse.
theories. Right, exactly. It blew away my theory. My theory was always that in Lowell you have a far more transient population, a lot more renters than
Communication
property
issues,
owners,
right.
Language issues,
Right.
and they may not be. Lowell may be a stop to their their next move up the
Right.
wealth ladder and their single family home in one of the burbs. And yet I think last year Chelmsford's election this year was about I think they got maybe to about double digits, but last year was like 4, 5, 6%, somewhere in
Yeah.
there. Like, what's the excuse for Chelmsford? My theory completely went out the window there. And Lowell's isn't bad by comparison.
They have no barriers to entry. Like, they have no barriers to entry to vote, And so, so you want to make excuses for Lowell because there are all these barriers to entry, perceived or otherwise. But we still rock it compared to
Yeah.
these communities. I totally agree. And I would also argue as a side that all our assumptions are being put in the blender. You would assume, you would have thought, not you, we would have assumed, we would have thought all our previous conceptions are being turned upside down and, flayed alive. So I don't know. I don't know what to think anymore. I would have thought that and this has been said before, district representation would have been brought out more. Now you have your turf. You can own it. You don't have to do the whole city. You just have to do your neighborhood. How hard can that be? Really, all you have to do is 600 votes to win.
Maybe 350 in the acre.
When I was, I came out with a children's book years ago, and when I was pitching agents, they said, "How many people are on your Christmas list?" I was like, "What?" He said, "How many people are on your Christmas list, your Christmas card list?" I said, "I don't know, 500, but I come from a big family." He said, "Okay, well, when you get to 1,000, come see me."
But
Ouch.
That's your purchasers.
Right. Those are the metrics that we started this conversation with. So, getting into office is not that hard, really. And it's really the matter of maybe between, in some neighborhoods, 300 to 700 votes. And that's it, man. I don't know. I just think it's having not run for office, or should, it should be more attractive. And I don't know why it's not.
Well, again, this is the thing. You have competing theories, alternate theories, and then time tells you who was right and wrong. So I remember pushing really hard on the radio in 2019. Pass this. Go for the district representation. Right. Don't do the ranked choice voting. Do a hybrid system. The more districts, the better. And we pushed it and it won. And the theory was, well, you'll have more competitive races. What you said, you don't have to go beat the whole city down. You'll get more and better candidates, because all you got to do is knock in one neighborhood, and the candidates will bring out the voters. And it worked like a charm in 2021. It was great. You had, councilors running against incumbents, running against incumbents. It was great. But I was wondering, I have to give Marty Laurie, former councilor, credit, saying to me, and Greg Pappas as well, telling me, no, you're going to create neighborhood kings. Once they win that first election, who's going to challenge them? Unless they're doing a horrible job. But now you're an incumbent. Now you start doing favors. So you're repairing potholes. You're getting the streetlights fixed. You're making sure the missed trash pickup.
You're getting on TV on every council meeting.
Exactly. You're filing motions. Yeah. You're doing all this stuff, and now suddenly someone. Because it's hard to beat an incumbent state rep and state senator. And they told me we're creating 8 state rep seats in Lowell. And I left open the possibility to it. And sure enough, in 2023, it looks like that's where we went. Let's see now. You've got, again, 4 very capable candidates in Belvedere running, and 2 good candidates in the Upper Highlands.
Right.
Will the races be competitive? Will they draw enough to give the city's overall numbers a big turnout? But if you don't have a competitive race in Pawtucketville,
well, and the district thing too,
Christian Hill or wherever.
When you look at the city council motions, they're treading on each other's turf with impunity. At large can do whatever they want. But you've got Belvedere filing motions. I'm spitballing here. I'm not calling out Cory Belanger. I'm just using it as an example. You got Belvedere filing motions on the acre and vice versa. That's not the way it's supposed to work. So sometimes I read those motions and I think, I'm confused. What am I missing here? Sometimes they tag team. Okay, so that's fine. So they don't have to get a second. Although, do they ever not get a second? I mean, honestly. So
I think out of courtesy, somebody gives you a second just so your motion.
Right, and so they collaborate.
That's professional courtesy.
But it can also be an area where you can carve out your space. But more than that, they're filing motions in a at-large mentality from a district seat. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I think that confuses people too. Why are you over here worried about my street over there? I don't know. That's just a little pet peeve I have.
Everybody files for the downtown. That's
right.
There's 11 downtown councils if you think about it, not just
right, yeah, because that's where the business. For the life of me, I can't understand why we're not just stop, drop, and roll. Just concentrate on the downtown business. Forget about it. And I can say this because I'm not a politician, but forget about all the neighborhoods. I think actually Centerville has more business licenses than downtown. I don't know how performing they are. Revenue, I'd have to look into that. But we've got to build our downtown. And when I had that conversation with Richard Healy about the Keep, I felt for the guy. I think you got to be kidding me.
It's a any small business,
the
especially the
you're down
industry,
here, right.
3 to 5 years it's 50-50, but by 5 years, half of them are gone.
Right.
So it's already a challenge when you throw in the other factors that, Lowell has had to deal with it, and he in particular because of his neighborhood. Mm-hmm. It's a challenge.
Yeah, and
you have to feel for these folks. 2
of his 3 years of his first 3 were COVID. And this guy still managed to do a slugfest and, last until 7. I think this is his 7th year anniversary. But I don't know, should it be that hard? What are we missing? And again, that's where I would love to have a big confab, where we're a city we're known for all our meetings. We call all the neighborhood meetings and do this and do that. But maybe it's time to just sort of sit down and figure out what the heck, how can we How can we right the ship?
I've been to one too many downtown
Have you?
meetings in my 30 years. I'll let you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, you're holding your own on your corner, so that's pretty good, right?
Well, we're very fortunate. My father bought that property in 1974. You're not and he's fortunate enough to own it, so you're not at the whimsy of a landlord who needs to make his payments, and the mortgage isn't at a level where if you bought your property 3 years ago, you're
still
screwed.
Right.
My father bought his house in 71 and his business in 74.
Is your father still living in his house?
He's still,
Wow.
he will not leave there. So, but the times
He's not
changed,
downsizing.
No, he's not. But yeah, he's going to downsize to a coffin.
Yeah, exactly.
When it's his time, that's his next move.
His last address.
So, anyway, always good stuff.
Well, so the last thing I was going to say was that the city ran a Women's History Month, and they profiled Rita Mercier.
yes.
And I was reading that thing, I was thinking, oh my gosh, I gotta get on the horn with Rita, because it sounded like she was saying goodbye, like she was retiring. And I thought, well, this is a story for the column. And I just dropped the ball. I didn't get around to it. And then, of course, she announced days later that she was holding her fundraiser, which, incidentally, hers was the cheapest one. Hers was only $10.
Always is.
All the other people were, the entry, point of entry, 25 to 50.
Well, they're suggested donations.
Well, suggested, right? But her suggested was 10. I can get around that.
Well,
So
when you've got Rita's years of service and popularity level, the money isn't as big of a factor as it is for upstarts.
Right.
But, I was surprised. I figured, okay, now that they've got the senior center sign with her name ready, it just needs to be hung when she steps down.
she could hang it.
I thought this would be her final term, and when I reached out to her at the turn of the new year, she said, "As long as I'm healthy, I'm going to keep going."
And she might run, maybe she'll run for mayor. I hear a little scuttlebutt that she's going to run for mayor.
That's the inside baseball.
Yeah.
Is it another term for the incumbent mayor, Dan Rourke, or does Rita Mercier get her second turn at the gavel?
Only one portrait, though. You only get one portrait for the
you don't
mayor.
get the second
I don't
portrait,
think you get
that's
the
right.
second portrait unless she wants a redo. I don't know. I have to go up to City Hall and look at those portraits. They're chock-a-block full of portraits up there. You turn a corner, there's a whole wall of them, and then turn another corner. And so I know there was a lot of beef about Patrick
Murphy's portrait.
But I didn't mind it because in the sea of oil paint, it sort of stood out. It was like, oh my God, I'm overloading on oil portraiture. And it was pretty good. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
All right. Well, follow the Lowell Sun. Melanie's got the Lowell beat and many other responsibilities as well. But read the Sunday column. We're making the Sunday column great again.
We are.
And no tariff to read the Sunday column.
No, I leave that to Peter. I leave the tariffs to Peter.
He has Peter too.
No, he's a good guy. He has a lot of. He's a fiery. He really.
We gotta get him in here with
we
you.
Do.
We do. I could push his buttons. I think
he's got a really great voice. He's got a radio voice.
Oh really?
Oh yeah, he's really good.
So how am I inviting you here?
I seriously, I'm like talking myself out of a job. But if you look at your I'm sure you do your voice. My thing is up and down and up and down, and I gesture wildly and all that kind of. Like I'm terrible for TV and probably radio, but he's just so mellow. And then you read his column, and he's like, "This is a man on fire."
He reads not mellow, but
those still waters run deep with that guy. But he's really a good guy. I will talk to him.
With you. All right, Melanie Gilbert from the Lowell Sun. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank all of you for joining us on the Daily Pulse as well. Tomorrow, former Lowell Mayor Bill Samaras will join us as we'll chat about the City Council meeting tonight and what transpired and everything else going on in the city. On Thursday, we're going to come to you a little late. We dropped the Daily Pulse at noon, but on Thursday, we got a special guest, State Auditor Diana DiZoglio. She will be here for an event, location change with the Chamber of Commerce, Coffee with the Auditor, going to be taking place at the Merrimack Valley Food Bank building on Middlesex Street instead of at Mount Pleasant. They just announced that last night, I believe. But your chance to meet and speak in person with the State Auditor, Diana DiZoglio, I will argue the most popular politician in Massachusetts as she continues her battle to audit the legislature. And then she'll leave the food bank and come over here to our Inside Lowell studios so we can talk a little bit more with her, find out, is she really thinking of running for governor? As people keep rumoring. We got that. We've got Leslie Boder on Friday. Daily Pulse drops every day at noon here on Inside Lowell, as we like to say, Inside Lowell. If Lowell is your home, this is your place. Till next time, stay safe, everybody. Stay warm, and I'll catch you on the other side.